I have to say I actually quite like it when this kind of story comes out, because it demonstrates better than anything how desperate the brainwashed net zero zealots in the current government are to push through their insane agenda at all costs, based on blinkered ideology rather than sound logic. It's simple. If they had nothing to hide, they wouldn't need to lie. But they have plenty to hide, and so the lies come thick and fast. In my previous video, which I will link in the description and pop a card up here, I discussed how the costs of wind and solar power were falsely lowered by government agencies, also infected with the net zero virus, in order to make it appear that they were the cheapest form of energy. Anyone with even a passing understanding of engineering can see immediately that this is completely impossible. And of course it's all done with smoke and mirrors, clever accounting tricks so that the government can spout its lies to fool the unsuspecting public. The evidence is clear in Europe. As the proportion of renewables increases, so does the cost of electricity. And now they've been caught doing it on the other side of the equation, desperately making nuclear look more expensive than it really is in order to scare the public and get their own way. Is it any wonder that trust in governments is at an all-time low? Welcome back to MGUY, British engineer and lawyer, now Sydney YouTuber. I'm only a few hundred away from 100,000 subscribers, which is absolutely ridiculous. Thank you so much for your support of this channel. So if you're one of the majority of my viewers who are not subscribed to this channel, please just click that subscribe button down below so you don't miss out on any future videos. And if you'd like to contribute to the channel, why not buy me a coffee? Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. Stay tuned for the clip of that legend, Professor Ian Plimer, who lays into our moronic Energy Minister Chris Bowen. But here's the article that shows how utterly desperate the government is to rubbish the nuclear option at all costs. Weaponised the public service. Chris Bowen's nuclear prediction arithmetic revealed. Energy Minister Chris Bowen weaponised the public service by instructing his department to produce entirely flawed figures to allege Peter Dutton's nuclear energy plan would see a 49% electricity shortfall by 2035, the coalition claims. Mr Bowen in September last year said, detailed government analysis of Australian energy market operator forecasts show the coalition's plan will result in massive supply shortages over the next decade. The Department of Climate Change and Energy now says what it did was not an analysis of the coalition's nuclear energy proposals, but an assumption-driven calculation. Those assumptions, it said, were provided by Mr Bowen's office. Of course they were. The department, in a response to a question on notice during Senate estimates, revealed those 5 assumptions about the coalition's energy plan and its calculations. It was commissioned in August, before the coalition released details about its nuclear policy. Mr Bowen, on the back of those calculations, asserted the coalition's energy plan would result in a staggering 49% gap between demand and the supply available to meet it. Frontier Economics Managing Director Danny Price, whose firm recently released commissioned modelling of the coalition's nuclear energy plan and had previously advised parties on either side of the political aisle on energy policy, said Mr Bowen dreamt up his own method to assert the coalition's nuclear energy plan would result in energy shortfalls in a half-assed way that produced a meaningless bunch of numbers. Opposition energy spokesman Ted O'Brien accused Mr Bowen of weaponising the public service, and the department's testimony showed Labour lacks any intellectual argument against the coalition's plan. Chris Bowen has decided to weaponise the public service by unfairly instructing them to do a calculation based on his own flawed assumptions about the coalition's plan and then packaging it up for the Australian public as if it is the calculation of the department itself, as if it's departmental modelling. But it's not departmental modelling, he told The Australian. This is Chris Bowen's imagination to achieve a political end and exposes how shallow his thinking is about Australia's energy system. This reveals the lack of detail on the part of the minister when it comes to planning for Australia's energy system. In other words, they've been caught with their pants down. Chris Bowen doesn't care about providing secure, reliable electricity for the country, because if he did, he would embrace nuclear for its genuine zero-emission generation and reliable baseload capability. But all he cares about is pandering to the Greens voters in inner city suburbs who they desperately need on side to win key seats in Parliament. If they had any principles at all, they would not preference the Greens, who are about as close as a communist party you can get to in Australia. But as usual with the left, it's all about power. So principles can go to hell. And hence we have the mad decarbonisation of our electricity grid, the demolition of reliable, functioning coal-fired power stations with absolutely nothing to replace it, apart from farts and sunbeams, and a bunch of astronomically expensive and at this time completely imaginary batteries. So it is refreshing to see Ian Plimer, that legend of climate sense, get stuck into Bowen on Sky News. Enjoy.
He's probably the worst cabinet minister in my voting lifetime, and I first voted in 1961. It's a very sad ideologue. He cannot understand that there are dozens of countries that stay alive with nuclear. There are dozens of countries that are increasing their coal-fired power capacity, and yet he wants to stick to his ideology. He wants to cook the books. He wants to force people to cook the books, and he is the very best thing that the Liberals have got in the Albanese government. He just has to stay there. Please, Mr. Bowen, stay in that cabinet position. Keep opening your mouth. Keep giving us the benefit of your wisdom. Keep showing us that you've had a very successful charisma bypass operation. Just keep doing it, please, because you're helping the Liberals.
Oh, he's just brilliant. Successive governments, not just Labour, but let's be honest, they're the worst, have transformed Australia from one of the cheapest places in the world for electricity to one of the most expensive. All driven by this mad ideology of net zero and crippled by a completely irrational fear of nuclear power. Anybody who wants to lower emissions but does not consider nuclear hasn't got their head screwed on. And as we've seen, it's their desperate need to hold on to power that means they'll go along with the communist Greens and not only destroy our electricity grid, but then refuse to consider the only rational alternative. We have an election here in Australia in a few months' time. Everyone should hope and pray that this bunch of losers is voted out.